The rate of violence against Indigenous and First Nations people, especially women, is rising at an alarming rate. Throughout history, there has been a huge disparity between the rates of missing persons in white communities versus those in Indigenous and First Nation communities. Murder is the third leading cause of death for Indigenous women according to the CDC, and Indigenous women are 1.7 times more likely to experience violence. The epidemic of violence towards Indigenous women and girls will not go away if we continue to sweep it under the rug. This is our call to action, and a sign that something must be done. Sophie Sergie is not just another statistic. She is not just another tally added to the chart of missing and murdered Indigenous women cases. Sophie was a 20-year-old woman with a bright future ahead of her, and unfortunately, that was taken away from her in a callous way. In 1993, Sophie, who was a member of the Yupik people, was living in Fairbanks, Alaska. She was a bright student at school who wanted to become a marine biologist, and it appears that her hard work had paid off. By the time graduation came around, Sophie had earned a full scholarship to attend the University of Alaska Fairbanks, and those around her beamed with pride. This scholarship meant that Sophie would be moving from her small village in Pitcairn Point to Fairbanks, over 500 miles away. Whilst this move signified a step towards her future, it was also likely bittersweet for Sophie. Moving away from home and coming into your adult years is a difficult situation to navigate, but with the right people around you, you manage to blossom. In April of 1993, Sophie had taken a semester off from university, and it appears that she returned to her village of Pitcairn Point. KTOO reports that Sophie had taken the term off to work and save up some money, possibly with the intention of using this money for the upcoming terms. On April 23, 1993, Sophie boarded a plane headed back to Fairbanks, but she wasn't going back to attend university. Instead, she was going for an orthodontics appointment, as she required corrective jaw surgery sometime in the near future. April 23, 1993 was a Friday, and her appointment was not until the following Monday, April 26, leaving Sophie with plenty of time to catch up with her friends and sort everything out at university. As she had technically dropped out for a term, Sophie had to stay with a friend, Shirley Wasulai, in the Barrett Hall on the University of Alaska Fairbanks campus. The two were happy with the short-term arrangement, and Sophie arrived at the dorm as planned. The two friends took no time in catching up on everything they'd both missed since Sophie had been gone. By Sunday evening, the worlds of Sophie's family and those residing in the dorms would be turned upside down by a tragic discovery. According to reports, Sophie, Shirley, and Shirley's boyfriend Noah hung out in Shirley's room, eating pizza, watching films, and catching up on the latest gossip. The mood was calm, with the friends enjoying the chance to get a break from the busy academic life that they had found themselves thrown into. At around 1:30 a.m., Sophie went to step outside for a cigarette, but instead opted to smoke in the ladies' bathroom on the second floor. Shirley would later tell investigators that she told Sophie to do this as it was far too cold and dark to go outside. A CBS report stated that her friend Shirley suggested that she smoke near exhaust vents in the women's shower room to avoid the cold outside. Sophie puffed on her cigarette, flicking ash wherever she could avoid detection. And that was the last time that Sophie was ever seen alive. As the hours rolled by, Shirley and Noah grew tired. The pair chose to stay in Noah's room, leaving Sophie a little note on the door. When morning broke and there was no sign of Sophie, Shirley became worried. Sophie hadn't called and nobody around the building had seen her. In the back of her mind, she hoped that Sophie had bumped into a friend and had decided to spend the night in their room after discovering that Shirley had gone. But this wasn't the case. Shirley and Sophie's friends at the university embarked on their own search for her, hoping that she would somehow turn up in the most unlikely of places. No matter how hard they searched, or where they searched, there was simply no sign of her. As the hours ticked by, the outlook became bleaker and bleaker. Sophie had missed her orthodontist appointment, something that was incredibly out of character. Sophie had been saving money for the corrective jaw surgery, and it wasn't like her to miss an appointment without telling someone why. All of these things sent alarm bells ringing, and then, just before 3 p.m., the bells came to a sudden stop with a horrifying discovery. As a cleaner was making the rounds to the women's bathrooms and facilities, they discovered a partially nude body of a young woman. Her pants had been pulled down, and her top had been pulled up. It was clear that she had suffered a violent death before being dumped inside of a bathtub. The woman had been stabbed, shot, and sexually assaulted, and now the campus authorities and local authorities had to determine the identity of their victim. It didn't take long for them to hear of Sophie Sergie's disappearance and connected the dots. A positive idea was made shortly after the woman was discovered, sending shockwaves through the student community. The University of Alaska has between 11,000 and 17,000 students at any one time, and those who live there in the halls or dorms have a sense of community between them. The thought that a cold-blooded killer could live amongst them terrified the students. Sophie had been a bright and vibrant young woman with a promising future, and it was hard to pinpoint an exact reason as to why anyone would want her dead. With a well-liked student now dead, the campus went into panic, and people became more cautious of their movements and who they let in their dorms. Little did they know that the perpetrator was one of them, a student just like them who was living a double life as a student and a cold-blooded killer. Sophie's case, unfortunately, ran cold. DNA samples were obtained from her body during the post-mortem, and while semen was retrieved, it yielded no matches. Without a match, officers were forced to dig further into the clues that they had, but still came up empty-handed. As the years passed, Sophie's case file remained on the desk of investigators who hoped that one day they would have answers. By the early 2000s, her case had been deemed a cold case, and investigators knew that it would take a radical new technique to solve this case. Then in 2018 and 19, the radical new technique came in the form of forensic genetic genealogical research. The DNA sample obtained from Sophie was once again tested, this time with new methods and procedures, and this time there was a partial match. According to KTOO, when DNA collected from the crime scene was partially matched to a profile in a commercial genealogical database, that profile was found to be the aunt of a man named Stephen Downs. After finding their potential suspect, the Alaska State Police summoned a DNA sample from Stephen Downs, and what happened next shocked them. Months of testing and hard work had finally paid off when forensic genealogists and other scientists confirmed that the DNA found at the crime scene matched Stephen Downs. Stephen was 18 at the time of the murder in 1993 and had lived on the 3rd floor of the Bartlett Hall, where Sophie had spent her final hours. While Sophie never got to fulfill her potential, Stephen managed to creep under the radar and went on to get a master's in business administration and also a nursing degree. Stephen had since moved back to his native state of Maine and had taken to caring for those who were vulnerable and sick, all the while knowing that deep down inside, he was sick too. Thanks to the advancements in forensic science, investigators were able to bring Stephen to justice for what he did, even if it took them 26 years to do so. In February 2022, Stephen Downs was seen before a jury who decided his fate. The jury delivered the verdict of guilty on the count of murder in the 1st degree. He is also found guilty of sexual assault in the 1st degree for what he had done to Sophie. His defense was displeased with this outcome, telling the court that the prosecution had not proved that Stephen had used a weapon used to harm Sophie. The defense also attacked the integrity of the DNA sample, attempting to point out that the scene had been contaminated and that the chain of custody had been corrupted. His lawyer, James Hallenick, would later address the media saying, We are obviously disappointed at the verdict. We had a thoughtful jury that examined the evidence over 4 days. A number of them were clearly very emotional during the verdict. We are going to step back and assess Stephen's options for him. The sentencing hearing for Stephen Downes is set to take place on September 26th and 27th, 2022. According to an article by Web Center Fairbanks, no bail will be allowed for Downes, and Downes faces a maximum sentence of 129 years in prison. That is it for this one. Thank you so much for listening. If you haven't already, please like, share, and subscribe. This will help my channel grow. If you have a future story suggestion or would like to contact me directly, you can do so by emailing me at creepyunsolvedmedia@gmail.com. Looking for more content? Be sure to visit creepyunsolved.com, where you'll find podcast episodes, YouTube videos, and the Creepy Unsolved blog. Until next time, this is Dylan signing off. I look forward to your comments below.